I'm here at Bath's train station on this beautiful sunny morning, not, to talk to Dan Paines, who is a spokesperson for Great Western Railway. And we are going to talk about trains between Bath and London mainly,
yep.
Bath, Bristol, but our service. Dan, the main problem that we have with our service here is it's very expensive. Why is that?
Well, it's not very expensive compared to other train operators. So the big comparison, I suppose, is with Birmingham into London. And if you're a season ticket holder, you can get that journey for about £20 a journey. From here, it's £19 a journey. So actually, the prices compare really quite well. But of course, successive governments have taken the decision to remove the burden of the cost of running the railways from the taxpayer. And that means that they're asking, and have asked for the last 20 years or so, customers and people travelling on the trains to pay that little bit more, and that's what's pushing the rise year on year from a passenger perspective.
Some train tickets cost £100 between London and Bath, particularly those where you have to make an unexpected journey. You can't necessarily say when you're going, so you have to have an open ticket. £100, £200 return.
Well, the most expensive ticket is around that, but actually a peak time ticket from here into London is about £90. Again, comparing that to somewhere like Birmingham, the same sort of price is about £10 less. So it works out at around 16p per mile. So if you compare that to maybe travelling by a car, which is probably going to cost you 45p a mile, and you're going to have to pay for your parking once you get into London, and you're going to have to pay for your congestion charge, that's actually a pretty good deal.
And what about actually the structures of the pricing? Is it actually very transparent? I think a lot of people find it isn't transparent.
I think you're absolutely right. It's one of the reasons why the rail industry has launched a consultation into how we simplify fares over the coming years, and I think it's really important that we get to the stage where people can trust that the fares that we're presenting to them are the cheapest and most suitable for their journeys. I think that's a fair comment.
Some consumers would say the train companies are in the business of ripping off people. What would you say to those people?
I don't think they are. I think, as you say, you look at the cost of travelling by car. It's significantly more expensive if you're doing that on a regular basis. You can always choose to travel by any other means of transport. And actually, on a regular basis, we've seen around 2 million additional customers every year.
Dan, what about reliability? Most people will say they do not use public transport because it's not reliable. It loses you a lot of customers. You have missed 4 out of 6 punctuality targets and every reliability target. What are you going to do about that?
Well, that's not good enough, but there are some really solid reasons for that, and we're working on those with Network Rail and other industry partners. So one of the reasons that we have been unreliable in the last 6 months or so is the state of the track. We've just seen more signalling issues, we've seen more problems with that, and engineering works. We need to get a grip on that, and Network Rail is looking into that. But from our perspective, a lot of those reasons are the bedding in of the brand new trains, and that's what's hitting some of our punctuality targets in particular. But now we're getting to the stage where we've got all of those trains in. We're in a much more solid place to deliver that reliability.
Any timescales for that, so that people know, our customers know, your customers know when this is actually going to happen?
Well, look, I'd be a very silly man to promise something on a specific date, but what we've got
5
now...
5 years? 5 months?
6 months a year. I mean, it's even shorter than that is when actually the brand new timetable will come in, and that will help us deliver those new benefits, but we're hoping to deliver that considerably earlier than that.
So you have blamed quite a lot of that on the new carriages and the new trains. Let's talk about the new trains.
Mm-hmm.
There were all sorts of issues about that one. I'm a cyclist, so my main interest about what can I actually do and how can I take my cycle on the train. People have been discussing the signage on the carriages. Why have they disappeared? And is it actually easy for cyclists to take their bikes on the train, travel by train, take the bikes off and continue their journey at the other end?
Oh, well, I think it is, and certainly the ability now to reserve a space for your bike within 30 minutes of that train departing is something that only these new trains have been able to give us. That allows us to put more bikes, if there is demand, on these trains. And of course, once you've got a reservation, you know exactly where you can put your bike, and you can go straight to that carriage.
But signage, we've just seen somebody struggling to find the carriage. I mean, he had to then get his phone out again, then he had to look, then he had to ask. Actually, signage, would make that instantly more easy, wouldn't it?
Well, not really, because of course you'd have to put signage on every single carriage to say that there was a bike space and he's got a specific seat booked. So actually he was on board before most of the passengers that were travelling by foot. It probably took him 20, 30 seconds to get there, and I think actually that's pretty solid.
I think it's debatable whether he was the first one on the train, but never mind. Let's talk a little bit more about the new trains and the teething problems. Weren't they tested before they were put on the rail? Didn't you know that it should be working absolutely fine? If I buy, let's say, a mobile phone and it doesn't work the day after I buy it, I'd return it to the shop, wouldn't I?
Absolutely, which is actually why we've got some of the problems in the first place. We've actually not accepted many of those trains from Hitachi when we were originally going to, so they got them right. But that causes its own problems in its own right by not having the trains in the first place and not being able to take them at all.
We are still sending diesel trains through Bath. We have a big issue about pollution. Why can't you pressurize government more to give us the money to electrify the rail right the way through?
Well, we're having some of those discussions, but from a customer perspective, of course, it doesn't make any difference. And there's a big lobby that's certainly asking for those wires to come through. From a purely railway perspective, actually the speeds that we're able to produce for customers makes no difference. But you're absolutely right. What that does mean is that you're not getting the full benefit of the wires and the electricity, and you're having to run through diesel.
And a customer is also somebody who breathes in the air in this city, and it is a silent killer. So we need the power and the pressure of your company to pressurize government to continue with the electrification. Dan, let's talk about carriage numbers. At peak times, there's often only 5 carriages there. It forces people to sit on the floor, to stand. It's not safe. It's very uncomfortable. Why is that?
Well, there's 2 main reasons. One is that we've just not accepted as many trains from Hitachi as we were going to at this point, and that's because we've asked them to get a couple of things right before we put them into passenger service. But second, because actually things do go wrong on the railway. It shouldn't happen anywhere near as much as it's doing at the moment, but things do not always go to plan, and sometimes that means we're having to run trains that are shorter than we would like to.
Would you say there's something wrong with the way your planning operates?
No, the planning is absolutely fine. In fact, the planning is working beautifully, because actually if something goes wrong with those trains, we're able to cut them in half and still run 400 or 500 seats, whereas previously with the high-speed trains we just weren't able to do that and we had to cancel them outright.
Thank you, Dan. You have been as honest as you could be. I think that's much appreciated. I hope some people have got some answers about why the services are what they are. I'm sure there will be more questions. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you.